Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hellacious Hero Returns. This is the first episode of Music and Chill. And today we are going to do Metallica's 1984 album Ride the Lightning and Trivium's 2015 album Silence in the Snow with Sanimation05. No, but Sanne and I have been talking about music a lot, and if you guys watched the CinemAsian Kung Fu Hustle stream, we talked about it at length.
Yours.
Yeah, but
Oh, CinemAsian, sorry.
Yeah, CinemAsian. Did I mispronounce that? My bad.
No, it's my brain.
Louie's in the house. The Hellacious One and Sanimation Metallication. That's true. Yeah, James Hetfield. Yeah. All right. So, where do we begin? Do we start with Metallica Ride the Lightning first? Let's do it.
Chapter.
Yeah. You picked it. You tell me when you first got into Ride the Lightning and Metallica. What made you pick this album? Let's go. You start first, and then I'll go.
I think it was like 1998, 1999 when I discovered Metallica through my brother because he was playing guitar and he was listening to all this shit. He was actually listening to Maiden too. So, So the way I discovered Metallica was mostly by all the live music that they were doing, because it was also the time of S&M, and I was watching Cunning Stunts and the amazing, the early 90s stuff that's just bomb diggity. So for me, listening to the studio album eventually was kind of like, what's this? Because I hear the pumped up versions, but Ride the Lightning is probably my favorite Metallica album.
Oh yeah, same. It was you actually got into them earlier because in the late 90s and like really early 2000s, like 2001 to like 2003, I was really into like punk music, and my best friend kind of was like, I really don't like punk music. He's like, why don't you listen to some of this? So when we'd hang out, like we'd drive around and go bowling and go out to eat and stuff, and he'd just like want to listen to. He had like this little iPod mini he would hook up to my car. And back then you had like a little FM radio transponder. You'd have to like type a radio signal in, and then it would pick up the iPod on that signal and play his music through that station. It was like, because we didn't have CDs or any of that shit. Like it was just like before all that. So he used to bring this iPod he had around with like all the Metallica stuff on, Maiden. He had Dio. He had like a bunch of metal that he was just getting into. So like as he was getting into it, he was trying to get me into it. And actually, he played Megadeth for me, like Symphony of Destruction and Holy Wars were like some of the first metal songs I ever heard. And then after listening to that, and then I like listened to Maiden and fell in love with them. It was after I had already listened to Maiden that I kind of started really getting into Metallica. So this is like probably 2005, and like you said with Ride the Lightning. I listened to Kill 'Em All first, and then I was going in order. I was like, I listened to their first album, their second album, their third album. I listened to Kill 'Em All, and I loved it. It was awesome. And then Ride the Lightning, like, that fucking album was amazing. And then obviously later Master of Puppets and Justice and so on and so forth. But I always kept coming back to Ride the Lightning because I was like, there's something about this album. I don't know what it is. Like ever since the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God, fucking amazing, right?
Yeah.
But to this day, I just told Connor before the stream, him and I argue what the best Metallica album is, and I'm still saying it's Ride the Lightning, and he's mad. If you're listening out there, Ride the Lightning is better than the Injustice for All. Hands down. All right. Yeah.
Ooh.
But what do you think of how the album starts out? What do you think about like the song structure, the composition, all that kind of stuff? You were talking to me earlier about some notes you took and like how you rated stuff and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
let's talk about it.
Well, it starts with Fight Fire with Fire, which, because of all the live shit that I saw first, I really loved it. But it was still really good in the studio album.
Oh
So
yeah.
it was just really amazing. And then it starts with Ride the Lightning, and that's just hands down number 10, like as
Right.
a grade 10. And For Whom the Bell Tolls, again, I prefer the live version more, but still, it's a solid 9. I think it's really amazing. And Fade to Black, it's pretty cool. I would give it an 8. I mean, if we're going to do the whole grading thing, right?
Yeah.
uh,
That'll be fun.
and then you have Trapped Under Ice, which is, I mean, it's a good song, but it's, as we said, skippable. But I would
Yeah.
still give it like a 7 because it's still good. It's same with Escape. It's also skippable, but I would still give it a 7 because it flows well with the rest of the album. Creeping Death, another hands down. That's a number 10. And though the live version just,
Amazing.
especially with Jason Newsted screaming, "Die."
Have you ever seen the live version before, live in real life? Have you ever seen the song played live?
I
You
think
saw
I have
Metallica.
once.
I've seen it once too. Fucking amazing. Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe maybe during the first time that I saw them, but then suddenly they were like Master of Puppets the entire album, and I was like, ugh.
That's
So,
amazing. See, I'm jealous of that. Yeah.
and then you have the Call of Cthulhu, which I would give an 8 because it's a nice background tune. I don't know, it's just it has a nice, creepy, gothy, mysterious vibe to it. That
Oh yeah. So where do you like when we go through these songs? I'm gonna ask you because I'm gonna do my list and then we'll go through the album in its entirety and just talk about like songs individually. So like I'm pretty much on par with Sanne with this stuff. We talked about it a little bit before the stream. Her order of songs, like the way she ranked them and stuff, I'm pretty similar. There's a couple things I would change. I think Fight Fire with Fire for me is like
I have to sneeze. Hold on.
no good.
Yeah,
Sneeze.
over
Just let
it.
it go. Who cares? Just sneeze.
Yeah, it's an attack. But it's like
That's all right. Let it go.
it's not. It's not. It's not. It's not coming.
This is metal. Right.
Okay, it's disappearing. Still itchy.
Itchy. No, you're right. That's cool. Fight Fire with Fire for me is probably I want to say it's like a 9 out of 10 song for me. I think it's one of the best Metallica openers ever, if not the best. Just how it starts off with a really like acoustic-y intro with the guitar, the ding 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 ding, and then it's just dan dan gang 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 gang. I mean that's an amazing evolution of the first album, Kill 'Em All, to that transition to that. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. Then obviously, like you said, Ride the Lightning, it just starts off super like, heavy, pretty much from the get-go. Another thing about Ride the Lightning, that song, for me, that's probably, again, I don't want to give it a perfect. I give that like a 9 out of 10, where Sonic gives it a 10. I give the first 2 songs so far 9s. Another thing about Ride the Lightning was a lot of the writing credits for that are attributed to Dave Mustaine, because he used to be the guitar player for Metallica before Kurt came, and then he went off when they kicked him out of the band. He went and formed Megadeth. So if you really listen to that song, you can almost kind of hear it in some of the riffs. But 9 out of 10 for that. It's just catchy as hell. I mean, when James just sings oh my god, I love it. It's unbelievable. Strapped in the electric chair. I mean, he just screams it. Fucking great. For him, the Bell Tolls, one of the most iconic heavy metal songs of all time. Based on the Ernest Hemingway poem about warfare and all that kind of stuff, modern warfare. It's fucking just amazing. And going back to backtrack here, Ride the Lightning, the title for that is from a Stephen King novel. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about this virus. We're talking about coronavirus. It's about like this influenza that gets released on society. I think it's called The Stand. I think the novel is called The Stand by Stephen King, and Kirk took Ride the Lightning. There's a passage in there where he says that in the book, and Kirk took that for the title. Amazing. Like I said, for him, the Bell Toll is one of the most iconic metal songs ever. Catchy as hell. my favorite part of that entire song is probably Kirk. And then Click comes in with like gang, and he's doing the bass line like gung 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 gung. That fucking is amazing. That bass run is amazing. Fade to Black. Wow, what to say about Fade to Black? I mean, that's see for me, Fade to Black on this album is one of my favorites. I give Fade to Black a 10 out of 10. It's just for him, the Bell Tools, I'll give another 9. Might be biased here, maybe, but it's 9.99 so far. Fade to Black for me is a 10. I think it's just a fucking amazing song. It has everything I want. It has the acoustic stuff in it. It has the heavy parts in it. My favorite part of that song is the and then Kirk's doing the order picking. It's fucking amazing. And like just the lyrics are amazing in that. And then when you get Trapped Under Ice and Escape, both of those songs, I'm going to lump them together because I'll be like honest, musically they sound really good. I like Trapped Under Ice a little bit better because I think the guitar playing in it is a lot like more sound and like just rippy, thrashy, and I love that. I think the lyrics in it are boring from James. I really can't get into it. Like I can't headbang to it. I can't like I get into the guitar parts. I'm like, yeah, because I'm like imitating that part. But like after that, like the chorus and the lyrics, I'm just like, nah. And that goes for both of those songs. So for those songs, I'm giving them like 5s out of 10. I don't think they're really that great. I think you could take those 2 songs off the album, and if you took those off, you might have a perfect album. And after that, Creeping Death is my favorite Metallica song of all time. So I'm giving that a 10 out of 10, obviously. The entire song, I don't even know where to begin. My favorite part of the song, like I could say it's the Die By My Hand breakdown, because that's amazing. I could say the riff itself, like the I mean, that's just an amazing riff in general. The lyrics too, I love the lyrics because it's about like, you know, in the book of Exodus with the killing of the firstborn and Egyptian like biblical history, like they would kill the firstborn son. They put the red paint on the door to let you know your house had been marked and your son, you know, to make sure your child was safe or whatever, that the God and the plagues wouldn't come to take your firstborn son and all that stuff. Like such an amazing
like story, actually.
Oh, so do I. It's like my favorite biblical story ever. And that's why I love the song so much too, because it relates to that. But I do want to say that it's not just because it's the biblical story that I love the song so much. That's part of it. But the song gives that story justice, in my opinion. Like the way it's written, how it sounds, lyrically, musically, how it's arranged. There's no other song that I could even like put my finger on to say that comes close to depicting that story like the way they did that. It's unbelievable. 10 out of 10, my favorite Metallica song ever. And then obviously Call of Cthulhu. No lyrics in that one, right? It's an instrumental, but it's probably one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic metal instrumental tunes ever. Like ever. And for that, I give it, this is another song that I give. It's not one of my. It's one of my favorites on the album, but it's not like in the top 3 or 4. It's still like, I don't know. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. It's a 9 out of 10. It's just absolutely amazing. The album itself is unbelievable, and if you know Metallica, with Kill 'Em All, they were really straightforward. They really went a thrashy route, and they were doing really fast and like really thrashy, heavy riffs, and I love that style. I do, but I think the reason why I love why I love Ride the Lightning so much is because Cliff Burton really let loose with the music theory on this. I think he taught James and Kirk music theory, the basics of it, because he knew music theory, and they started to really write more progressive anyway, music, especially like I mentioned with the acoustic passages, the extended solos, the different layers of music within, because like there's so many different pieces to these songs that we're talking about. Like if you're a fan of Metallica and you go back and you listen to their discography and you go from Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning, it is a completely different world. I mean, it's like Kill 'Em All is super fast, thrashy. And like I said, I love it. It's really straightforward. You know, I love Jump in the Fire. I love Seek and Destroy. I love the Four Horsemen. I love Motor Breath. I love those songs. But when you go to Ride the Lightning, and even if, like, when you listen to the beginning of Fight Fire with Fire, it's so soft and it's so melodic and it's so different. It's more harmonious. It's more, it's a more mature record. And it's funny because it only happened less than a year after Kill Them All. They got all that information and all that learning and all that experience and all those tools and just made this fucking outstanding album. You know, to this day, it's still my favorite Metallica album ever. Nothing comes close to it. Besides, if I had to pick another Metallica album that's really on par with it, like neck and neck with it, it'd be Master of Puppets.
Master.
Yeah, it'd be Master of Puppets. So yeah,
definitely.
But what are some of your favorite lyrics that you like on the album?
Well, as I told you before the stream, like I don't know all the lyrics because most of the time I can't really understand it. My ear just doesn't pick it up. But I do like Creeping Dead because of the biblical thing, and I really like that, the whole Hebrew stuff. So, yeah, I guess also because I'm used to the live version, so you pick up just a few things of lyric wise, and just mostly fire. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'm the worst Metallica fan out there. I don't know, but I don't care. I just really enjoy the music, and that's what it's about.
I'm gonna go track by track here. I'm gonna say my favorite lyric from each track, besides Call of Cthulhu, obviously, right? Because it's instrumental. But Fight Fire with Fire. My favorite line of that is actually at the beginning when he says, "Now to fill our lungs the hot winds of death." I love that. He's like, "Armageddon's here. Now take your last breath," and he goes into the riff. Just the maturity of the songwriting, like even in just that example I just gave compared to Kill 'Em All, just that even short sentence in that example of that lyric, it's so much more mature, so much more philosophical, so much deeper than the stuff that they did on Kill 'Em All. And then Ride the Lightning. There's someone else controlling me. Death in the air, strapped in the electric chair. This can't be happening to me. It's like this guy, they're telling the story through this guy who's strapped in an electric chair, getting ready to be like executed. And he, you know, in the lyrics in the song, like, burning in my brain, I can feel the pain. You know, it's like you can actually almost, when you're listening to the song, feel the guy getting electrocuted. Like it's that powerful of a song. Like it really conveys the message. Obviously, for him, the bell tools, just the way that's constructed, how James sings sort of like a little offbeat to the riff, it makes you feel like you're in Ernest Hemingway's version of that wartime thing, where he's like, you know, make his fight on the hill in the early day. You know, hear a voice deep inside, and you know, just the way it's, and then the riff. I mean, so epic, so epic.
Yeah.
Fade to Black. I mean, it's really about like a struggle, like an internal struggle almost. Like, that whole song, I love that so much. Like I said, I give that 10. It's just Kurt's solo at the beginning too, where he just comes out and just plays the beginning riff like that. I mean, that whole solo at the beginning is mind blowing. One of my favorite riffs on the album, favorite solos on the album. You know, it's a beautiful solo. As a guitar player, like, and as somebody who loves guitar and like watching that, I mean, I'm just like, every time I watch it or even hear it, I'm just like, oh my god, it's beautiful. You know, it's so good. Then obviously, like I said, after that you get Trapped Under Ice and Escape, and there's nothing really for those two songs. Musically, they sound good, but as a coherent piece of music as a whole, I don't know. Like Sana said earlier, they're skippable. Like oftentimes I'm not gonna lie, I skip them. And then, like Sana said, Creeping Death, the entire fucking song is amazing from beginning to end. I don't even know where to pick my favorite lyric or line of that because it's just epic. Even the part where they stop at the beginning, where it's like, gang, 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 gang. And I mean, just that part, even like the little hesitation is so badass. And then Call of Cthulhu with the kind of like, there's a little bit of like almost like a vocal kind of like growling in the background in some pieces of it. It's really neat. I like that. Like,
You're all excited this shit.
oh my god, I love it. I love Metallica so much. I love his album.
Mm.
Nothing comes close to their old stuff as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, definitely. 80s Metallica is the best.
Absolutely. Freaky Louie saying 90s Metallica is the best. Enter Sandman, hands down, 1991 Black Album. Yeah, it's a good
Well,
song.
I
I
can
mean,
understand. I mean, I remember that one mostly being played on MTV, growing up, and
nothing
nothing
else
else matters.
matters. I know.
No.
1990s Metallica again, same album too. You know, it's funny because the transition from them to 80s to 90s, I think you and I kind of talked about this before the stream. Metallica is legendary. Don't get me wrong; they're always going to go down in history as one of the greatest bands of all time. I think they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, they're amazing. They're amazing. When I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a couple years ago, I think they had like Kirk's guitar and they had like one of James' guitars and some of Laura's stuff in there. But like the thing about them that I will say this as a Metallica fan, and you and I talked about this a little bit beforehand. I love them, but their later stuff just does not live up to standards. Like Death Magnetic was really good. Hardwired to Self Destruct was not. And it's hard to look forward to a new album when they churn out something that's not rewarding as a fan, you know? And like we had to wait 8 years between Death Magnetic to Hardwired to Self Destruct. Death Magnetic came out in 2008. Hardwired came out in 2016. I waited 8 years, and I remember seeing the cover, and I was like, "Oh man, is this going to be good? Let's hope so." And I listened to the first track they released from Hardwired, and it was Hardwired to Self Destruct, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not really a fan of that. I hope the rest of the album is good." Then there was a couple more songs, and I was like, "Okay, it's actually all right. It's not bad." Then you get the album, and half of it's like good, and the other half's like, skip, skip. For me as a Metallica fan, if I go to a concert and all I want to hear is the old shit, I feel like that's a problem. Like I should want to hear. I'm not saying I want to hear the new shit as much as the old shit, but I would at least want to hear the songs because I thought they were good. And I can't really say that about Hardwired to Self Destruct. I can't really say that about Load, Reload, and Sin and Anger because, like, quite honestly, in my opinion, those albums are garbage. Like, there's a couple redeeming songs on Load. There's a couple on Reload, like The Memory Remains and Fuel. But other than that, name a song on Reload that's good. I can't. I don't think there's anything else on there that's good. I mean,
I think in the 80s they set the standard, and in the 90s they were following the standard of what others were doing. And after this whole explosion of new metal and this more aggressive stuff, like also with Slipknot, I thought with Saint Anger they really tried to follow that trend, but it isn't them, and so therefore it didn't really touch me. And I
same.
haven't actually been following them since then. I did go to concerts, like I saw them in 2006 and 2009. It was pretty cool, but once again, as you said, you're there for the old shit. I cannot give a rat's ass about the new stuff. They should actually, to sorry to say it for the new Metallica fans that love the new shit, but they really should like stop embarrassing themselves and be like, okay, we left a legacy, and be like Kiss or something or Motley Crue and just live off that, and throw out like a greatest hits every now and then. I don't give a shit, but new songs, no. Like even with Motley Crue, right? They were fucking those one of those bands in the 80s that especially in America exploded. But now they tried, or they coming back together again. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Like they're really turning into Kiss. Like, oh, this is our last tour, and they've been saying it for like the last 20. But it just doesn't make sense. It's the same thing with the Japanese band X Japan. They were great until 1992, and then they really tried to continue, but the entire band like kind of died in a way, literally. But now they also really try to ride the current trend, and it's just
Yeah.
it's not doing it.
Well, I agree with you for the most part. There's kind of something I want to add to that too. Like, I agree. Like, 80s Metallica was its thing, and that was like the heyday, right? And then when they got to the 90s, they tried to be more popular. Like, they shaved their hair. They didn't grow it long. They were trying to be more mainstream, like you said, with bands like. Just think of the 90s. Like, when the 90s, like, yeah, Slipknot and stuff came out later, but like that was when grunge exploded. Like grunge and punk came back again. And people weren't really listening to metal, but a lot of people weren't, you know, at least in the States anyway. That was like punk and grunge was like a new thing. It was like, oh, sweet, you know,
Mm.
we didn't really give a shit about metal that much. So, like you said, Metallica tried to follow suit and be like, okay. And what they did is they kind of started on that train with the Black Album. That was a more like popular, upbeat, more radio friendly album. But I will say this about the Black Album: I like the Black Album a lot, but I think it's overrated. Some people say it's like their best album, and for
Mm.
me, no. Like Enter Sandman's great, Sad But True is great, Nothing Else Matters is great. You know, Through the Never is great. Wherever I May Roam is great. You know, Don't Tread on Me is great. The album's amazing, but it doesn't compare to that thrashy, just like visceral, philosophical 1980s, you know, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and then later And Justice. And as we say that too, you also have to realize that they're probably mourning the loss of Cliff Burton, who got crushed by a bus on the Master of Puppets tour. I mean, that was a devastating blow for those guys. And he really was the musical and lyrical driving force to the band. You know, he really was like a really big piece in songwriting and musical composition. So when they lost him, it's kind of hard to replace somebody like that. They got Jason Newsted, who did a fucking hell of a job, right? But if you listen, yeah, but if you listen to And Justice for All, it kind of goes back to the less progressive elements. They're still there, but you can hear the thrash from Kill 'Em All in And Justice. But that's what makes And Justice a really good album too, because it's like they learn stuff from Cliff, but they still have this stuff that they originally thought. And then when you bring it together, you get songs like Blackened and Short of Straw and Harvester of Sorrow. But then you get songs like One that's like really progressive, but like really heavy, but really thrashy at the same time. So, but then after that, they kind of did the Black thing and then had just like a slew of junk. But I think what they should do, I don't think they should retire. I think what they should do is go into the recording studio, quit waiting a fucking decade between albums, and just like write a good metal album. And here's another thing. You don't need to fill up the entire fucking record or CD. Don't worry about an album being 10 or 12 songs if it's not quality shit. Give me a 45-minute, 8-song album that harkens back to fucking Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. And as a Metallica fan, I'm gonna be like, this fucking album kicks ass. Who cares if it sounds similar to Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets? You want to emulate your best shit. You know? Like, that's the point.
But they can never emulate that. So that's why I said, it's best to just like, I mean, to come out every once in a while to tour is fine by me, but I don't think, and I hope for them that they can prove me wrong, but I don't think they cannot really put out a really good album anymore that I'm like, yeah.
I think they have the potential to do it, and the reason I say that is because other bands do it.
Because James is back to drugs or alcohol.
Well, he's back in rehab and he's doing all right? But other bands do it. Like I mentioned to you, my favorite band's Iron Maiden. They consistently stick to the formula. They know what's worked. They know what they've done in the past that people loved, that was well received, and they stick to it and they love it, and they make amazing albums. You know?
Yeah, but I believe, Nine Inch Nails has the same thing. Like when Trent was on drugs, he was the best. Like the first Pretty Hate Machine came out in '89, so his '90s stuff is amazing. And then what came afterwards, I mean, it still is listenable, sometimes good, but it can never top what they did before. And that goes for a lot of bands, like Guns N' Roses. They can never live up to what they left behind with Appetite for Destruction and Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. Like, they can come out every time. Same thing with Faith No More. Faith No More tries again, but it's basically a whole different sound, what they're doing. But you can really hear the influence of Mike Patton, the crap that he's been doing for the last 20 years. But hey, let's put the name Faith No More on it, and it will sell. It's not that good.
in the end, it all depends on the artist and whether it's about, artistic inspiration or money, or is it worth it, or do I still want to do this? And I think some of those people who really deep down, some of these guys probably feel like they've had their fill. They're probably like, I've been doing this for 30, 40 years. I'm done. I'm just doing this to make money now. Whereas,
Fate No More, definitely.
oh yeah. Whereas like other bands, like I mentioned, Maiden, they literally do it for fans and they do it because they love to do it. Like it's their life. Like without creating a solid record and touring and making a badass show, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. And I think some artists are like that, whereas others, I think Metallica is kind of like in the middle. Like they still have that drive and they still have that desire to do stuff. But when it comes to creating like new material that's actually good, they struggle with that. Like they really struggle with that. Like it's just, I don't know.
It basically sucked after Jason left.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to disagree with you. I mean, I think they were bad before that. I think they were bad after Black.
True.
After the Black album. After the Black album, I just think their records that they actually were releasing were bad. They were bad. And that's why Jason left. Jason was like, this is bad. I don't want to do this anymore. This music is bad.
Wasn't he bullied out of the band?
Basically? Yeah, but why though? Why do you think he was bullied out of the band? Because he was trying to write songs that were like progressive and more like thinking outside of the box of this like cookie cut, we need to do this load reload shit, Saint Anger shit, right? Like he wasn't even there for Saint Anger. Like the producer Bob Rock, who produced the album, played bass on that album, and Lars is out back banging on trash cans for drums. Are you serious? That's your drum sound? I'm talking about, yeah, I understand.
Yeah, the Slipknot sound, right?
Yeah, I understand being progressive, but when you're banging on trash cans, dude, you still need to have like a drum set with tuned heads on it. You can't just beat on a trash can and think that sounds good. Like frantic.
Basically, he was beating the album in the trash can.
That album's garbage. Saint Anger is horrible. It's horrible. From an A-class band like Metallica, Load was bad. Reload was an improvement, in my opinion, over Load, but it was still bad. Saint Anger, like when I think of Metallica, I don't even like that is the biggest piece of trash album I think ever.
And trash not in a good way.
Yeah, it's bad. What's up, Jeff? Oh my goodness. It's like everybody at the show was having a good time, right? Even the dog. Your dog must have
as soon as that like
thanks, Sean.
weed, I'm like, we're in the Netherlands. Hey Sean.
Yeah. But before we get in a tangent here and talk about how much we dislike new Metallica because Ride the Lightning is so amazing, the album that I picked, Silence in the Snow by Trivium. Now I'm going to say this right off the bat. The reason I picked this album first isn't because it's my favorite. I picked it because I wanted to put a spotlight on it because I think it's an underrated album. You know, it's not my favorite Trivium album, but I really think it's an underrated album, and there's meaning behind it that I really love. So, Sanne, I know this is the first time you listened to this album.
Yeah.
I know you haven't really listened to the newer Trivium stuff, and you listen to stuff like Shogun and then before that. So, like, what did you think, your impressions of this album at first? This is Trivium, Silence in the Snow. What did you think when you listened to this, going from, because Shogun was the last album you listened to before this, right?
Yeah.
So what did you think, how this compared to Shogun, and then before that would have been Crusade, and then Ascendancy, and then Ember to Inferno? How do you think that compares to those tracks in your opinion?
Well, I really like Trivium. I mean, I saw them live like 2 or 3 times. I think 2 times. And I mean, I went to see them for a reason. And this was like 2006, 2007, whatever. Yeah, 2006 with Metallica, and 7 or 8 where they did the show with Annihilate, as I told you. And I didn't really like the first album, though I really did appreciate Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr or something. But I was not really a big fan of the Pull Harder. I was like everybody was doing it, and it was just so annoying to me. Sorry, allergy attack. But when they started progressing and he started to, use his vocals more, I really started liking them more because I was like, hey, this is kind of like the metal sound that I want to hear. But you had this duality with friends and stuff that are like, oh, they just try to be Metallica, oh, they just try to be this, or they try to be that. Like, yeah, but the album is good, so you can't really deny that. I mean, the shit that
Absolutely.
Metallica's been releasing for the last 20 years, they
Bad.
do a better job. Eh, so with was it Shogun that you had like We Are the Fire? No, that was the other one.
That's Crusade.
Yeah,
That's Crusade.
I can't really remember which songs I liked on Shogun then, but I do know that was the last era because then I just went to K-pop and all that. The transition. Um, so what I was expecting was something like that. I was like, because they probably really not really go back to the annoying grunting, screaming style of the beginning of the era. So when the song started, it starts with this instrumental thing. And I was like, okay, where's this going? And then it starts with the song "Silence in the Snow," and I was like, dang, Larry, what is this song? This is pretty fucking cool. And then the next song was "Blind Leading the Blind," which I also was like really fucking impressed.
It's
And
good.
and
It's
then
good.
it continues like the phase being good, and then near the mid of the album, it just goes, "Nyeh," for me personally. Like it just became a drag to listen to like like 5 or 6 songs. It's like I already listened to this type of song, but
Damn, 5 or 6. God damn. I
there are
thought
like
you meant
11
like
songs on here, and I
2 or 3. There's 11. I thought you meant 2 or 3 were bad. I was like 6. Damn.
yeah, it was more the
No, that's cool. I mean, that's your opinion. That's cool.
yeah, around like Pull Me from the Void. I thought that was the last good banger that really had my attention, but what came after that, I was like,
Yeah,
all
I can see
right,
that. I can see that. Yeah.
oh yeah.
No, there's. Let me give you a backstory about this album and the reason why I wanted to showcase this. Like, Sanne and I just talked about how she was kind of annoyed at first with like the Ascendancy, like, blah, 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 or it was just all screaming. That's what he did. Like the first 2 albums, Ember 2 Inferno and Ascendancy, he really does sing like that a lot, except for the choruses. Like in those albums, like on Ascendancy and the choruses, he sings.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of like you, I would have friends who listened to Ascendancy. They were like, oh, it's so fucking badass. I love it. And there were other friends who was like, I don't really like that. I prefer Ember 2 Inferno. It's heavier. It's darker. So I feel like Trivium went from like this almost black metal, thrash metal hybrid early on to becoming more progressive, kind of like what we said with Metallica earlier. And the thing about Silence in the Snow was when they did Shogun, and then they did the first time I ever saw them was on the In Waves tour, the album that came after Shogun, and I fucking love that album so much. That was the first album I actually listened to like in its entirety of Trivium, and I went back and got like Shogun immediately after that, and I love Shogun so much. Shogun's my favorite Trivium album. But after In Waves and the album after that was Vengeance Falls, during the Vengeance Falls tour, Matt, like Sana said, because of all that singing he did on Ascendancy and Ember 2 Inferno, he was actually singing improperly. He was actually abusing his vocal cords because he technically wasn't trained how to sing. So he blew out his voice during the Vengeance Falls tour in 2014. And he actually worked with his vocal coach to get his singing back up, but he still couldn't do growls. He couldn't do the growling stuff. So
how unfortunate.
This album actually, Silence in the Snow, was actually written back during Shogun era Trivium, but the way the song is constructed and the lightness of it, it's not very thrashy. It's more melodic sounding, more progressive sounding. Like I said, the guys didn't want to put it on Shogun because they just didn't think it fit the rest of the album, and I'm glad they didn't because it doesn't fit the rest of the album. It's something completely different. But the inspiration for Silence in the Snow actually came from these guys touring with Heaven and Hell. If you guys don't know who Heaven and Hell is, it's actually pretty much Black Sabbath with Dio. That's what it is. It was Black Sabbath with Dio, because the first album that Dio did when he joined Black Sabbath back in the 80s was an album called Heaven and Hell. So Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler renamed the band with Dio Heaven and Hell, and these guys toured with them in 2007. And they met Dio, and they started listening to more Dio stuff and Heaven and Hell stuff and Black Sabbath Dio stuff and the band Rainbow. And Corey, the guitar player for Trivium, and Matt, the lead singer and rhythm guitar player for this, said they drew heavy inspiration from the Heaven and Hell album by Black Sabbath. And Silence in the Snow was written pretty much as a thank you to Heaven and Hell. Like, we love touring with you guys. This song is so meaningful to us. That album is so meaningful to us. We love it. We're going to write this. And Matt Hafey actually created Trivium's mascot. You might see this a lot on their albums as of late, but this is the first album he made an appearance. Matt Hafey's tattoo artist actually came up with that design for their mascot, who's named Ibaraki. Ibaraki was Matt Hafey's half Japanese and half Irish. Ibaraki was a demon in Japan, Japanese mythology, and that's where they got the mascot idea from. And the title track, Silence in the Snow, is actually a Japanese piece. It's like a painting, Japanese painting. It's two samurai warriors fighting out in the middle of the snow. It's actually a real Japanese like mural, like a painting. And because Hafey's half Japanese, that's where he got the inspiration for this album. But I wanted to give you a little backstory of that, because I think it takes a lot of guts and a lot of balls for these guys to release an album after their frontman, their lead singer, pretty much without Hafey. Like, I can't even see Trivium continuing on as a band, you know? Without him, Trivium doesn't exist, in my opinion, because he really is Trivium. Like, he is the foundational piece for that band. But it takes balls and guts for him to blow out his voice and say, I'm still going to give the fans something. I think it's time that we do Silence in the Snow, and it's time to do this album. So, much as Sanne said, it's not my favorite. I do think it's better than some of the other stuff they did. I actually like it more than Ember to Inferno, and I actually like it more than The Crusade. I think it's better than those two albums. I'm not really a big fan of The Crusade, and I'm not really a big fan of their first album, Ember to Inferno.
Yeah, I think with Crusade, there were maybe 5 or 6 songs that I really enjoyed, and the rest was just like, oh yeah, I'm listening to the album. But Shogun was next level. I do remember being blown away by it.
Absolutely. For me, I compare Trivium, the Shogun album, to Iron Maiden when they got Bruce and they released the Number of the Beast album. Like, Shogun is their Number of the Beast, so to speak. Like, it's just that fucking good. It was like a completely, I mean, like, it's like still a high point. But like I said with this, like Sanne said, Snowfall is actually written by a Norwegian metal guy named Isan. He is in the band Emperor. It's a black metal band. They're Norwegian. Matt Hafey and him are really good friends, so he asked him if he would do the Snowfall instrumental at the beginning of this album for him, and he agreed. And it just so happens, Matt Hafey said in several interviews that Emperor is one of his favorite bands right now. So it's kind of cool that they were able to do that and get together and do that. Silence in the Snow track is amazing. I love it so much.
His vocals, it really just blew me away. Whoa!
One of my favorite songs on the album is the title track, Silence in the Snow. I think it's really, really strong. And every time I listen to it, I think about that Japanese painting, because it just brings that imagery to my head. And if you listen really closely to the album, here's another thing I want to say. A lot of the lyrics in the album deal with the idea of snow and the idea of cold. If you listen to the lyrics of the album, Matt Hafey mentions cold or snow or ice or things like that throughout the entire album. In almost every song, I think those words are mentioned. So it's really neat how they tie that together and kind of carry that whole thematic concept throughout the entirety of the album.
I didn't
Another thing about it. Yeah, it's amazing. Blind Leading the Blind, like you said, is an
Oh,
amazing track. You know, uh, his vocals in that, like in the chorus, like "Blind leading the blind to the sea, they're drowning." I love that.
yeah.
Um,
But also, I do remember them, especially when they came out. I mean, they got so much hate because people really, when they were listening to them, they're like, oh, they just try to be Metallica, oh, they try to be Iron Maiden, oh, they try to be this, oh, they try to be that. But as I told you before, they really represent what I consider the good metal nowadays. Like they
well,
really keep it
yeah,
alive.
yeah. I said this to my friend a couple years ago when we saw these guys because I've seen them twice now too. I saw them open for Dream Theater in 2011, and I saw them play with Bullet for My Valentine and Tooth Grinder back in 2018. And I was going to see them this year, but coronavirus canceled my plans. They were going to play with Megadeth, Lamb of God, and In Flames. That was going to be an amazing show, but it
Can I
got canceled.
join?
Yeah, no. Hopefully they redo it next year because I'm still hoping for that show. But um, like Sana said, they keep the spirit of metal alive. And I will say this: I don't get it why people say that. Like, as a metal fan and as a fan of metal music, why wouldn't you want a band that's similar to Metallica and Iron Maiden if you like that music? Matt Heafy, Corey, Paulo, and their new drummer Alex Bent have said in several interviews, and even their old drummers Matt Madiro, Nick Augusto, and Travis Smith, they all said in interviews they love Black Sabbath, they love Iron Maiden, they love Metallica, they love Megadeth. These guys are metalheads through and through. So of course they're going to want to sound like the people who inspired them. I mean, who
Yeah.
doesn't want to do that? But you can't sit here and tell me that Matt Heafy and Corey aren't going to shred a solo in front of your face and it's going to sound fucking like butter, because it does. Like, seeing them live, and even some of the tracks on here, they are very, very serious, very, very professional, very, very skilled musicians. And I give them all the credit for trying to emulate and take inspiration from their heroes, but also create something new. And that's why I chose Silence in the Snow, because it's a direct correlation to their time spending touring with Heaven and Hell in 2007. And I think it's fucking badass. Um, like you though,
Fucking
Dead and
badass.
Gone's amazing. I, yeah,
When
I
he
love
says fucking badass, he means it.
I do. Dead and Gone, that solo in that song, Corey solo is amazing in that. The Ghost That's Haunting Me is really cool. I think that song was inspired by Matt. Matt said I watched an interview with Matt when he was talking about the Ghost That's Haunting You song, and he said he'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and see like these shapes or something at the bottom of his bed, and he didn't know what they were. So he was like, "Are they ghosts?" And then he wrote the song, which is cool.
Yeah, but
Um,
though I gave it a 7 out of the other earlier songs that I would give an 8 because I
yeah,
thought it was a bit, but
yeah, yeah. I can see that. Pull Me from the Void. Um, I like the song too.
yeah.
But much like you said, Sana, I think after this song, it's kind of where actually the next song I really like the next song too, actually. But Pull
But
Me from
yeah.
the Void, I like. Until
Mhm.
the World Goes Cold. I will say this: this album in general is more of a arena kind of like more popular metal music sound to it. It's almost like if I were to compare this to a Metallica album, because we talked about Ride the Lightning, I would say this is kind of like their Black album. This is like
Oh,
this is like them, well, trying to become more popular. I'm not saying it sounds like the Black album. I'm saying the popularity concept, trying to reach a wider audience. I
uh-huh.
think that's kind of what they did with this one. Um, but then, like you
Don't
said,
really agree with comparing it to Black Album.
I think I'm not saying it sounds like a Black
No,
album.
but in that sense, I no.
You don't think so?
Maybe more the load and reload.
Someone doesn't like this album.
No, I
um,
think the first let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4. For sure out of the 11 songs, I like 5. Which is
yeah,
also, as I said before, with their older stuff. So they're doing a good job.
I think Rise Above the Tides is good, but I think this is where it starts to get kind of weak. Rise Above the Tides is kind of weak. The Thing That's Killing Me is kind of weak. Beneath the Sun's kind of weak for me. Like, those three are the weakest songs on the album for me. But then I
Yeah.
think when they come back at the end with Breathe in the Flames,
Yeah, that
and like
was really good.
yeah, it's kind of heavier, and like the last like 45 seconds of the song is like a guitar solo. It's like that's fucking awesome. So like, I mean, but like you said, and here's another thing I want to say about this album. I would not recommend, if you're going to listen to Trivium and this is the first time you're hearing Trivium, don't start with Silence in the Snow, please. I would advise anybody who wants to listen to Trivium, and the album I would say to start with would be Shogun, because it
Definitely.
is their apex, and it is a perfect blend of the old heavy growly shit with the more progressive stuff, which they're doing now. Silence in the Snow is a unique departure, and I think it's underrated, but by no means do I think it's their best album. My favorite album, like I said, is Shogun, but I will say this. In Waves, that came after Shogun, is fucking amazing. It's an amazing record. Check it out after you listen to Shogun. After you listen to In Waves, check out Vengeance Falls. It's a little bit better than Silence in the Snow, in my opinion, but it's still kind of a step down from those two. And then after you listen to this, their two latest albums, they came out with an album in 2017 called Sin in the Sentence, and an album just a couple months ago in April of this year called What the Dead Men Say. Those two albums are like Shogun level albums. Like they are seriously, if I was to sit here and rank albums, Shogun would be number one. In Waves would be number two for me, but only because of a nostalgic thing for me, because it was the first tour I saw them on. But it's a really strong album. Number three, I can't even tell you what 3 and 4 are, because like Sin in the Sentence and the latest one they just released, What the Dead Men Say, are so fucking close. Like, it's the best shit they've ever done. And that's what we're talking about with like Metallica. Like, this is an example here. These guys have 9 albums out now. When you get a band that's new stuff is on par with their best stuff, like I just said, Shogun, In Waves, and then their latest 2 albums, that's a fucking good band in my opinion. When they can actually churn out new shit that is just as inspirational, just as meaningful, just as heavy, just as everything a metalhead like me wants in a record, that shows me that this is a really solid band who really gives a shit about the fans, gives a shit about the stuff they're creating and writing, and really cares about what they put out there, because they do have a strong passion to create and to challenge themselves and to be, like I said earlier, they are professional musicians and they love what they do. And you can hear that in the later stuff. And like I said, for them to put this out with Hafey blowing out his voice, that's a bold fucking move. And it's a turning point in the band. I think if they wouldn't have put that out and they would have waited a couple years, who knows what would have happened? Who knows if we would have got Sin in the Sentence and What the Dead Men Say. It was because they had faith in Hafey and his vocal ability that he went and got a coach, and because he gave a shit about his fans and his occupation and his passion for this stuff, that this album came out. So while it's not their best in my opinion, it's definitely worth a listen. Don't start with it. Listen to the other shit first, come back to this, and give it a listen.
Yeah.
Good shit. Good shit. But yeah, anything else to say about Silence in the Snow song? I kind of rambled there.
No, as I said, the first few songs are really, really nice, especially being already an older fan from 15 years ago. To see the evolution, I think is pretty cool. So I was really amazed, because it's been a while that I've listened to Trivium and a lot of music that I used to listen to, but shows like this one will pull me back in, because while you were saying like a band that has 9 good albums, that says something about the band. Because I was thinking about Lacuna Coil. I remember like 20 years ago when I discovered Lacuna Coil, the Italian band.
Yeah,
they were really cool. They were kind of like, well, they were a mixture of like The Gathering, the Dutch band, and it was really cool. They had Coma Lies, and they had like 2 big hits with Heaven's a Lie and Swamped. And then with Karma Code, they really tried to be like an American band, like, oh, we want to play Ozfest. I believe Christina Scabia was like dating the guy of Slipknot, and there was such a change. I mean, Karma Code was still acceptable for me, but what came after that, I was like, who's this? I like it when bands change, but if it didn't feel sincere to me. And with Trivium, it's like you see them evolving, and I'm definitely going to check out, of course, the 5 albums of Maiden that you told me to listen to, and I'm going to check out Trivium now too, because I want to know what the fuck they did after Shogun.
Oh my god, please check them out. Like you will, I can hear it now. You're gonna say the same thing. You'll be like Shogun in waves. I mean, it seems like we like similar stuff, so I think you'll really like those albums. But I just want to echo what you said there because it is. I mean, here's another band, and we talked about them a little bit before. Opeth. Opeth had this really black metal thing with Michael Ackerfeld. They would do a lot of death growls, but a lot of clean. It was a nice mixture of both. They came out with an album in 2011 called Heritage, and Ackerfeld said, "I'm not doing death growls anymore. I don't want Opeth to be the growly death metal folk kind of band that it is." He's like, "I want to go back and do progressive rock because that's kind of what I want to do." And at first, I was pissed off. I listened to Heritage and I was like, "Fucking Opeth sucks. They're garbage. This new album is shit." Then they came out with an album after that, after Heritage, called Pell Communion, and I listened to it, and I was like, you know what? This doesn't sound like Opeth, but it sounds like a really good fucking progressive rock album. Then they came out with an album after that called Sorceress, which continued in the vein of progressive rock. No more death growling, just like really acoustic melodies, really cerebral sounding, almost reminded me of King Crimson stuff. Listen to Sorceress, and I was like, this is a good fucking prog rock album. Then last year they came out with an album called Incauda Venenum. Listen to it. It's one of the best progressive rock albums I've ever heard in my entire fucking life, and I'm a huge fan of prog rock. I love King Crimson. I love Rush. I love Yes. Those bands. Like, it's amazing. So like Sanne said, when you're sincere with your transition to something, it will pay off later down the road. And when I went back and listened to Heritage again after Incauda Venenum came out, because I hadn't listened to it in years because I couldn't stand it because I was so mad initially. I went back and listened to it, and I was like, this is a good fucking album. I was naive to believe that because I was so pissed as a fan that they didn't do what I wanted because they didn't come out with an album that was the same. They came out with something completely different. And I know we kind of bashed Metallica earlier, and we were like, yeah, they were doing stuff different, but it wasn't a good different, the stuff that they did in the 90s. It wasn't a sincere different. It was just them trying to be somebody that they weren't. And I think that's another thing, too. You have to be authentic to yourself throughout the entire process. You have to churn out music that makes you feel good about yourself. And that's why bands like we mentioned, Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and stuff like that, just didn't work out and their stuff isn't as good because when they went to write new stuff, look at Chinese Democracy. It was just not sincere. It was just them saying, like, we're going to put on an album because it's been so long and people are bitching at us for not putting out an album. Really, honestly, that's what I feel like it was because that album was bad. Like, but then you have bands like I said, Opeth. You have bands like Trivium where, yeah, this wasn't the best thing they ever did, but they learned from this. They took elements from it. And when you listen to the stuff that came after this, you can totally hear how they learned from their mistakes and tried to create something that was a blend of everything they've ever done up to that point. And when you listen to it, trust me, Sonny, when you listen to it later, because I know you're going to listen to it, you will hear what I'm talking about. So,
if I'm not going to watch a Mafia movie.
Oh, yeah, we're doing that too. Movies and show.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
What
but,
to do?
Yeah, no, right. It's so tough.
I know.
It is. It is.
Life's hard.
But yeah, I mean, another thing I wanted to bring up too, like you said, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but Matt Heafy's like idol is James Hetfield. Like growing up, he wanted to be just like James, you know, and the personal connections I've had with this band. I've only seen Trivium twice, and I've only seen Metallica once in my lifetime. But when you go see these guys and they play live stuff too, it's unbelievable. When you have bands that churn out stuff like this and you listen to it, and then here's another thing I want to say about, I'm going to say Maiden because Maiden's my favorite band, but Maiden does this. When they release an album and you listen to it, it actually sounds like it's a live album, and it's actually a studio album. When a band does that and you listen to it and it sounds live, to me, that's a good album too, because the later stuff that these guys have done, the stuff, like I said, with Opeth and stuff that they've done lately. Another one of my favorite bands is modern day bands is Amon Amarth, the Viking metal band. They sing strictly about like Viking mythology and stuff. Their albums sound live. Like when you listen to them, it sounds like you're in the room with them. They they do it, like the way they record it just sounds like it's live. It's like, I love shit like that, you know? Then you have a lot of bands who do this like compression bullshit and they make stuff tight and they overdub guitar solos and do all this shit. Like, that's something I respect about these guys. If you guys have watched the Shogun Behind the Scenes DVD, they talk about the recording of the album and they're in the studio and it's just the guys playing the guitars. There's no fucking overdubbing. There's no bullshit. Corey is literally playing the solo. Matt is literally playing that. You know, it's not like I'm going to play a part here, then we're going to record another part, then we're going to put another guitar over top and do this and do that and do that. No, they have to memorize the music. They have to do it.
Yeah. But it's also interesting to see Matt Heafy and I believe Corey too with that Roadrunner United project. You know, this was still in their early days because this was like 2005. It was so interesting to watch, everything happening, how they were writing the songs, and how they were communicating with musicians that they had never worked with. And yeah, definitely a recommendation. Probably it's on YouTube and, amazing musicians coming together.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely check out these guys. And that's another thing about these guys too. They're sincere people, like they're the nicest fucking dudes you could ever meet. Sonny, you met Matt Heafy. You said he was like the nicest dude you ever met.
Yeah, he's really cool. I mean, you see like some sort of like beat on stage and then afterwards it's like, hey guys, how are you? And,
Even his crowd interaction, you saw them live. When he's announcing to the crowd and they're playing the songs, and then between the break when he's introducing a new song, he's like, "All right, my fucking friends, let's go, my friends." He always says "my friends," like he always calls you his friend, and you believe him. You're like, "Yeah, I'm your friend. I'm Matt Heafy's friend, baby. Woo! What's the next song?" A lot of bands don't do that. There's some bands who I've seen live who are just like dickish. Like I saw Exodus and Testament. They never did that. They were like, "Our next song is." It's like they hate to be there. It's like, if you don't want to be here, like, don't fucking play the music, dude. Heafy's like making the crowd get into it. I want to see everybody up here right now. Get into a mosh pit. Let's go. I want to see everybody's hands up in the air. That's how Bruce Dickinson is for Iron Maiden. Everybody out there, like he'll sing the song. He's like, I want you to sing it. He'll make you do the wave. Dio used to do that shit. He would say like, our next song is going to be Heaven and Hell. I want everybody to start clapping their hands when we get to this part. I'm going to do it. And Dio would go, oh. He's like, when I do that, I want you guys to go, oh. And fucking everybody does it. It's like the way they control the crowd.
I think a lot of bands take everything for granted. Like, I mean, it's an honor if you go in America to like different states, but also like different countries that people spend their fucking money to come and see you live, and some of them are like queuing already for hours. I mean, it must be an honor. And as you said with Matt Heafy, he really is like, you really feel you're getting worth your money. Like, yeah, I was having a good time. Like, it's one of those concerts that you will remember. Like, yeah, or
bands
like James Hetfield would say, yeah,
yeah. But you know what? I saw some behind the scenes stuff with Metallica too. I've never met the guys, but I've seen them. They're really nice when they have the meet and greet stuff. Lars goes up and shakes everybody's hand. James goes out and shakes people's hands. Kirk is shaking people's hands. Rob Trujillo is shaking people's hands. They sign hundreds and thousands of pieces of merchandise at one show. They actually do give a shit about the fans. Yeah. I met Johan Haig, Ted Lundstrom, and all the guys from Olavi McConan, and all the guys from Yoki Walgren from Amon Amarth. Last year, I was wearing an Iron Maiden shirt because I didn't have a Amon Amarth shirt to wear to the show. I went behind stage. I had a meet and greet thing with all the guys before the show. Nicest dudes ever. They literally, like, you went through a line. They signed memorabilia and stuff for you. They signed the new record because I have Berserker, their newest record. They signed it for me. They signed a poster for me, too. Because I was wearing a Maiden shirt, I remember the 2 or 3 people before me were just wearing regular clothes. They went in, signed the stuff, took the picture, and they left. They saw me wearing the Maiden shirt. They literally talked to me for 5 minutes, just about my shirt. They were like, "Oh, the Number of the Beast shirt." I was like, "That's a great album. Iron Maiden's so amazing. Were you a fan of this? Are you a fan of that? What's your favorite Maiden song? What's your favorite?" And fucking Johan Haig's bullshitting with me like I'm his friend. I've known him for 30 years. It was amazing. And the dude's this freaking 6'3" fucking Viking. It's like, yeah, man, what's up, man?
You were so happy that you didn't wear a Guns N' Roses shirt.
I was, because those guys. If
you would start a conversation.
If you watch Amon Amarth's Pursuit of Vikings behind the scenes DVD, they actually go to the Legacy of the Beast Iron Maiden show at the end. It's actually in their DVD, and they're like
Cool.
talking with members of the band. It's so cool. They're such an amazing group of guys, like the humblest people you ever meet in your entire life. I love bands like that so much. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it does rule. It absolutely rules. Absolutely, bands like that kick ass. Rock flicks.
They also have that audience participation with Madonna, for example. I've seen Madonna multiple times. I know it's a whole different thing, but Madonna's one of my favorite artists. People will start a fight because she's not singing, she's not. If you see her live, no matter if you're a fan or not, you will be like, damn, this bitch really puts on a show. Aside from the last two of them, but before that, and then especially with a song like a prayer, how the entire audience is like, and how they're all singing. Like Madonna doesn't even have to sing it, because that is the one time during the concert where the audience really like overpowers her, and she just let the audience sing it. That's pretty cool.
I love the crowd participation thing too. Like Louis said, it's I love it, and I hate to say,
to think that this song is a blowjobs is like,
it's amazing.
I thought it was like a prayer, like. But then later in life, when I understood English better, I was like, what?
I think it's cool. Like that's a good example though. Like with her and the crowd participation of people singing songs, like letting the audience sing. Because Iron Maiden, I know I'm bringing up Maiden again, but like in a handful of the songs they wrote, especially in the later albums they've done since the reunion in 2000, they actually have parts in the song where it's just chanting, and they do that on the record. And then when they go to a live show to perform it, like they just do it, and people instantaneously do it. Like they have a song called "The Wicker Man" on the Brave New World album. It's the opening track of the song, and there's a part in there where Bruce at the end, it's just like whoa, 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 like that's the whole like end part of the song. And you can bet your ass when I saw them sing that song on the tour twice last year, and then I saw that song again in 2010, like 9 years earlier when they played it. I seen that song live 4 times. You can bet everybody in the fucking audience was whoa, with Bruce. Like it was amazing. It's just,
where also it's like a great crowd participation. I have to say it slowly. Is when you see shows of in Brazil or Chile, because a lot of those people, they are not able to sing along with the lyric, but they will just go along with the guitar rhythm. Like I saw this Nightwish show in Brazil, and I was like, wow.
You know what's funny about that though? You mentioned that. Again, I got to bring up Maiden because they have a live album. They have a live album called En Vivo, and they filmed it at a Studio Nacional in Santiago, Chile, in that amphitheater. And I'll tell you what, even though the Chileans can't speak English, they know every fucking word to the Maiden songs. I'll tell you that. That's like no shit. They know every word to those songs, and they're singing it. And if we go back again to Metallica, we were just talking about your album was Ride the Lightning. That's the one you picked. The fucking breakdown part in Creeping Death. Yeah. Die. Die. And then James comes out, and he plays like an extended version of that. He plays it for like, obviously it's only like 4 bars, but he plays like 30 bars of it. Like, die.
So cool how everybody gets into it. Desperately Seeking Susan. Yes, that's actually a movie that I started it like 21 years ago when I got it, or 20 years ago when I got it on DVD. I made it a thing to watch it every year during Christmas. I love the movie so much. I remember when I had my hair lighter, and my hair is naturally curly, and like here you can see the cross thing, and I had like was wearing all the crosses. People would always call me Sanne Ciccone.
Nice.
Freaking ridiculous, because I really liked that era of Madonna. Also because she was wearing those hair ties, whatever you want to call it. And I used to have those. I was always wearing those when I was a kid, because my mom didn't want to put my hair like tied to the back. She was like, "No, you have nice curly hair, so let's put this bow in." Even though I was running and like pulling it back. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, good times.
No, but see, this is cool, guys, and I want to kind of touch on this too. This is our first episode of Music and Chill. Um, we do another show we did yesterday on Sana's channel called Movies and Chill, and we're going to be doing the CinemAsian stuff again too. That's coming again. Like I said, we just have
An
so many.
inspiration.
Yeah, and we decided that we're going to do Inspiration, but we're going to do it as a part of CinemAsian. So it's going to be CinemAsian Inspiration, and like with that, we'll do movies like Big Trouble in Little China, Kill Bill, Mortal Kombat, stuff like that. Stuff that is
Cobra
inspired.
Kai.
Yeah, Cobra Kai, stuff that's inspired by Asian cinema and Asian art and that kind of stuff, but it's actually made by Americans, or it's an American studio that's doing the stuff, so on and so forth. So that's gonna be parts of that. But this has been a really cool episode. I mean, I really, really like talking about Ride the Lightning. It's given me like it makes me feel like I'm a teenager again, going to pick up my guitar at the music shop and being like, I want to play metal, like it just listen to that again today, and then talking about Silence in the Snow. And because me too, as a human being and as a person, I sing and I play guitar, and some of my favorite and biggest influences are guitar players who also sing. So like Matt Hafey is a big influence for me. I love him. I have a Gibson Les Paul sitting over here in the corner that I got because of Matt Hafey. Like I saw his guitar and I was like, I want something like that, right? Matt Hafey's a huge inspiration for me. James Hetfield's a huge inspiration for me. Bob Dylan, guys like that. Jimi Hendrix, sing and play guitar. I mean, Ronnie James Dio, he's a singer, but I loved him. Tony Iommi, guitar player. Guys in bands like that. Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth, he plays rhythm guitar and he sometimes does lead and sings. Like I love bands like that. The band Periphery, if you guys ever listen to them, Periphery, amazing. You have to check them out. Amazing, like new prog rock. They play gent. It's called gent. The style of music they play is called gent. It's like really weird time signature, crazy, but it sounds amazing. Yeah, definitely check them out. Amazing band. Between the Buried and Me, if anybody's listening to them, amazing. Check them out.
I was just thinking, like, I see this, right? Remember when you got into Metallica and this was like, oh, this tour was like 10 years ago. And now it's like this tour 30 years ago. That's how,
yeah.
with music and movies, but mostly with music, I realize how fast time is going. It's like, oh, that album that was like 10 years ago? Oh, it's already 30 years ago. Damn!
No, I agree
with
you.
The Ambition tour, it was like, oh, that was 10 years ago. And when I think now, 10 years ago, I was seeing Madonna during the Sticky and Sweet tour. I was like, what? And before I saw her for the first time in 2004 with the Reinvention tour. I was like,
it's crazy. Like we talked about it yesterday with the Godfather stream on your channel. Like that movie came out almost 50 years ago. And to think about that, you're like, holy shit. And like me and my friend talk about it all the time, and we even talked about it, you and I, today on this stream. Like Iron Maiden, they reunited and came back together as a band. They had 20 years of music before the reunion. They had 20 years of music before they got reunited. They came back together in 2000. Me and my buddy were talking like a couple months ago. Brave New World, that album, the reunion album, when they became a 6-piece band, that album just turned 20 years old. 20 years old in May of this year. Like, we feel like because we got into that like 4 or 5 years after it came out that like it was really new. Now we're looking back on it and we're like, holy shit, that was 20 years ago, dude. It's insane. Awesome possum. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. For me, as somebody who does it, I'm an amateur musician, and I was in like a short-lived band when I was in college with a couple of my buddies, and we played Metallica covers and Iron Maiden songs and metal music and some stuff like that. So like, it is a big part of my life too, and it does express a lot of feelings for me. Like when I listen to this stuff, it means something to me. It isn't just something to put on and pass time. I mean, and Sonic can say the same thing because I know her and I've talked about it. Like when I listen to Trivium, and when I gave you that history of what the album's about with Japanese, the painting, and Ibaraki, the demon, I'm a historian too. So it's like through this music, I'm getting to express me. Like there's a part of me in this music. And that's another thing I want to mention about these bands and these CDs that we selected today and these albums that we selected today. When I listen to an album and it makes me feel like I'm me and I feel like the album is speaking to me, I know that that's a good record. Because when I listen to it, like we talked about with, the Ride the Lightning song, Creeping Death, when I listen to that, I visualize the passage in Exodus. When I listen to Silence in the Snow, I visualize that two samurai warriors fighting each other. It's as artsy people and people who are passionate about that kind of stuff, and then you can hear it translated through somebody else's frame of reference in another art form. Like Matt Hafey's half Japanese. He's writing about himself. He's writing about what he's passionate about. He's writing about the things he loves. James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett and Cliff Burton were writing philosophical lyrics on Ride the Lightning because they love that stuff. Steve Harris from Iron Maiden, he writes songs about religion, philosophy, fantasy, science fiction, horror, all that stuff. Why? Because he loves it. And it makes you almost to a certain extent connect to those people. Like when I think about Steve Harris and I think about him and I sit there and I think about the stuff he's written, I'm like, you know what? Steve Harris is a lot like me as a person. Like if I was to sit down and have a cup of coffee or a drink with Steve Harris, we would probably shoot the shit about the same stuff. I'd be like, what'd you think about the Phantom of the Opera movie? And he'd come to me with his British accent. Oh, it's pretty good, mate. It's a pretty good movie. I really enjoyed it. I wrote a song about it. I made it. I feel like he'd have a conversation with me like that, I feel like, and that's kind of what music and chill and movies and chill is about. Like Sana said the other day, it's kind of like we're taking our opinions and our viewpoints and how these albums make us feel and how these movies make us feel, and we're conveying them to you guys, much like the artist who created them tried to do themselves, right? So that's what this is about.
Oh, Louis.
Rockin' Louis.
I hope one day you can get to hear his improvising set.
Oh yeah, I did an improvised set for Sana, and she enjoyed it. She was laughing. It was pretty funny. It was fun.
I mean, the shit that comes out of him like that quickly is okay.
So make sure you guys. Yeah, if maybe I'll do an improvised set on the show sometime. Who knows? But make sure you guys, please, if you haven't listened to any Metallica albums, or if you haven't listened to them for a while, go back and check them out. Go back and listen to Kill 'Em All, Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, and let's throw Black in there too, because it's actually a pretty solid album. And I want to give an honorable mention to Metallica too. I know a lot of people criticize the newer stuff, and rightfully so, like we just said. Death Magnetic. Yeah. I did too. Death Magnetic is not as good as the 80s stuff. I'm not saying it is, but it's actually a decent album. I would give that a listen. It actually does have a really good song structure. There's some meaningful lyrics on it. The music sounds really good. The only criticism I have with that album is Kirk Hammett uses wah, like a wah pedal on his solos on every song. It's like, dude, enough wah. But other than that, it's a good album. Check it out. As far as Trivium's concerned, go back if you haven't listened to it a while. Start with Shogun, and then listen to their latest stuff too. Like even if you want to start with like What the Dead Men Say and work your way backward, do that too. Listen to Sin in the Sentence, listen to Silence in the Snow, listen to Vengeance Falls, listen to In Waves, listen to Shogun. Those albums are really strong. That's like the meat of where their really good stuff is. They weren't really developed in the front with Ember to Inferno, Ascendancy, and Crusade. They were still kind of like forming themselves into what they are now. So go back and listen to that stuff. We really, really hope, behind the scenes after show with my improvised guitar licks. We really hope you guys are enjoying this new stuff that we're doing. We are a lot. I'm really having a good time doing this stuff. It's really cool. So thanks again for tuning in.
Most of all, Louis.
Yeah, Louis. Thanks, man. We had Sean in here. Too.
Yeah, but Louis really deserves the Medal of Honor because he's always here. He really is supportive.
You are supportive, man. And you know what? Another thing that's awesome about Louis too is, after talking to him and him coming to the streams, we're getting to know him a little bit more. He's, like I just said, with Metallica and Steve, it seems like he's similar to us too. Like he likes a lot of the same stuff we like, and that's really cool. It's cool to meet people who have like a similar mindset and stuff like that. And you guys can we can gel and we can talk and we have this like synergy, so to speak. And it really makes things work for us too, because it gives us something to talk about, gives us stuff in the chat. So we really appreciate it, man. You are awesome. So
Yeah, we
keep
appreciate you.
We do appreciate you. Keep listening to your metal music and your music in general. Watch your
Yes.
awesome movies, whether they be gangster, fantasy, sci-fi, Asian, drama, action, so on and so forth, because we're going to be doing a lot of that here. And we will come back with CinemAsian at some point. We're just not sure when that's going to be, but it's not done. We didn't end it. It's still around. We're just doing some other stuff now. We're going to mix it up a little bit, and almost like we said with the artists who are doing these albums, as people who are creating this content and trying to do this, like, we kind of want to have diversity too. We don't want to be stuck in the rut where we're doing the same thing over and over again. It's nice to kind of like experience and explore new stuff too. So it's cool to do that as well. So thanks again,
Otherwise, we
everybody.
get bored.
Exactly. Like artists would too, like writing music or even directing movies, right? So thanks again. We appreciate it. And we will see you guys next weekend. I think next weekend we're going to be doing the movies and chill on my channel, and we're going to be doing music and chill on Sonnet. So we're going to flip-flop back and forth with those, so we can do that evenly. It's only fair. So we shall see you. And make sure you obey your master. Master! See you guys.
Ciao.
Later.